Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakor Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. Alright, so you have Iran praises China for rejecting U.S. threats. Alright, because as you know, they did the economic D-Day. Alright, where, Nero was basically challenging anybody who does any type of financial business with Iran, or I basically try to isolate them to get everybody else to stop messing with them. But, these major players, China, as I'm going to get into, Russia as well, they're not going to fall in line just because, this place says so. All right, and this is going into Obadiah, when scripture say, he going to make them small amongst the heathen. Right, because if you notice everything that this place does, or everything that these Edomites do, as far as their international dealings, all right, it's getting rejected immediately. Nobody's, just falling in line, and even to the point where they're allies. And that's in Obadiah as well, where they're allies, all right, or even speaking out against them as well. But I'm gonna get into the article. Parliament Speaker Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf, has said the strategic partnership between Tehran and Beijing needs no one's permission. All right, so you see this is them just, defying it, man. All right, you can throw all the sanctions you want, you can come with these threats, but we don't need your permission. You're no longer the leader amongst the nations, man. All right, is what China is saying, man. All right, it says Iran has praised China for rejecting U.S. threats to impose sanctions on countries that continue to trade with the Islamic Republic, with Parliament Speaker Mohammed Bagher saying on Wednesday that Tehran's strategic partnership with Beijing needs no one's permission. Says Ghalibaf welcomed China's principal statement rejecting illegal sanctions against Iran in a post on X. All right, and China has said this in other situations as well, that the sanctions that this place is putting on other nations, all right, the most latest one being Iran with this economic D-Day business, all right, is illegal. It's a crime. You can't do that. But of course, Esau, bends the rules, man. All right, he's an outlaw, man. All right. Even the rules that he so-called sets in place, all right, he break them rules too. So he has no problem, defying anything, man. I mean, look at how he exhausts himself as the Most High. He has no problem doing this shit. He's just a lawless creature, man. All right, so you saying, China saying, which they've said this in other situations as well. Them saying this don't mean none of that. He's lawless, man. It says the Iran-China comprehensive strategic partnership is rooted in mutual respect, win-win cooperation, and a shared vision for a multipolar world. He wrote, this relationship needs no one's permission. His remarks came after Beijing strongly rejected Washington's threat of secondary sanctions against countries and companies that continue doing business with Iran. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Tuesday that Beijing firmly opposes sanctions that have no basis in international law or authorization from the UN Security Council. China said its cooperation with Iran complies with international law and should not be interfered with, warning that it would take all necessary measures to protect its rights and interests. That's war talk. The necessary efforts with this dude is war. As the scripture said, the third woe cometh quickly. That's the only shit you can do with them. You know what I mean? That's the only language Esau speak. It's bloodshed, violence, mass death, disease warfare, trickery, deceit. You know, that's all you can do with them. And they know this, you know, these nations. So when they say, you know, they'll do anything to protect its rights and its interests, all right, which those interests involve business interests as well, that means we'll get with you. We'll bomb you. We'll go to war with you, all right? Because America, you know, the American people still have this idea that the world is scared of their military. Now you have some people on this planet that still can overpower. I mean, you've seen that with Venezuela. You know, they can overpower them, but the big dogs in the fight, man, the Russias, the Chinas, and they not scared of that, man. And that's why you hear them talk so openly about their disdain or how they disagree with the moves that this place makes internationally, man. Russia and China, they always the first ones to say something, man. All right. But it says Washington unveiled a new round of economic measures against Tehran on Monday as part of the Trump administration as part of what the Trump administration described as an effort to further isolate Iran from the global economy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced sanctions against nearly 60 individuals, entities, and vessels, and warned foreign countries and companies that they could face penalties for maintaining financial ties with Tehran. The measures targeted companies based in mainland China and Hong Kong, but stopped short of sanctioning major Chinese financial institutions. Beijing has been the biggest buyer of Iranian oil for years, although flows have been severely curtailed since Washington resumed its blockade of Iranian ports in mid-July. All right, so it's bubbling, man, you know, because they messing with their money. You know, this shit, you know, affected the world's economy as far as, you know, what's going on in Iran right now, man. All these blockades and, you know, basically trying to bully them out of that, you know, area so they can take control. You know, as I mentioned, Venezuela, again, the same thing they did to Venezuela. You know, recently I read another article where he said, you know, now America and Venezuela is coming to a deal where America basically takes over that oil, you know, the oil over there in that land. That's all that was about, man. And that's all this is about, for them to take control so the nations have to answer to them on a level, man. Because if they take control of that, you know, as this talks about China having a relationship with Iran as far as buying oil, if they take over that, well, who does China have to buy the oil from now? And whoever else, you know, is doing business over there, which, you know, a large variation, you know, or a large portion, you know, if the world gets their oil from there, man. You know, so it's a rich land, so, you know, it's just a power play, man. All right. It says the latest pressure campaign come nearly 6 months after the U.S. and Israel launched a war against Iran in late February. Large-scale fighting has subsided following a series of temporary agreements. All right, when they shall say peace, peace, then comes sudden destruction. But efforts to reach a lasting settlement have stalled, while Washington has stepped up economic pressure on Tehran. It says Iran has denounced the expanded sanctions as a violation of international law and argued that Washington's attempt to force other countries to sever economic relations with Tehran amounts to interference in their sovereignty. All right, but they don't believe that none of these, you know, people are sovereign, as they say, because they believe everybody answers to them. All right. So, as the scripture say, man, the second woe has passed, and the third woe, all right, the third world war cometh quickly, man. You know, all this shit is going down, ending the war. And the dude, as he, you know, ironically, as Nero is trying to isolate Iran from everybody as far as financially, right? What he's doing is isolating this place for the world to hate him. All right? And the world, all right, these nations are eventually, okay, gonna shoot missiles on this place. It's gonna start a war, man. All right, everything that's happening is just leading to World War III. You know, no matter how much they talk about, you know, these deals getting done, and you know, the Most High is putting war in the heart of the leaders of these nations, man. You see it every day. All right, but I ain't gonna hold you. I hope that video was edifying. Shalom.